a WWE Hall of Famer, a former WWF World Tag Team Champion, an NWA Southern Heavyweight Champion. You may know him as the Soul Man. He is Rocky Johnson. Rocky, welcome to the Two-Man Power Trip.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Now, Rocky, obviously, so many people know you as the Soul Man, Rocky Johnson, one of the most charismatic figures. But what have you been up to? I mean, we're obviously going to play a major role here in this show and talk about the book, but what has Rocky Johnson been up to?
Well, I've just been living up here in Florida. We just moved back down here by Tampa. It's about another place. I'm just taking it easy, working out, working with kids, kind of semi-retired. I do signings, autograph sessions, stuff like that. But as far as wrestling, I'm retired. And I do work with some of the younger kids that trying to get into the wrestling business.
Now, obviously, the major focal point of this interview will be the book you got coming out very, very soon, Soul Man, the Rocky Johnson story. And obviously, the foreword of the book is by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, one of the biggest stars in the history of the business. But what kind of sets you on the path of writing this book?
I wrote the book. I just wanted to do my life story and started right from when I was growing up in Nova Scotia, Canada, moved up to Toronto, got into the boxing business and boxed for a while, got into the wrestling business, went all over the world. And I just want, people to know that the road I kind of paved or opened that I feel I did for other wrestlers. It was hard and rough and tough in those days in the 60s and 70s.
Now, obviously, you blazed the trail, you're paving a way for a lot of wrestlers. Can you just talk about how hard it was at that point? Like you said, it was 60s and 70s, but I don't think a lot of people kind of grasp it. Pretty rough time, especially for a big black superstar to kind of make his way through the wrestling business.
It was extremely hard, more so than blacks. When I first started, there was only like 3 blacks in the business: Boba Brazil, Sweet Daddy Zeke, Bearcat, right? So it was hard and rough, especially when I went to the South, because being Canadian, I had to go through all that. But I was a trailblazer. I never got mad, never got upset. I knew I could do it. And I like to say, I'm not bragging to the point, but I let people know that I was the first black Southern champion, the first black Georgia champion, first black Texas champion. I can go on and on and on. I won 156 titles through my whole career. And it was hard. It was rough. And even being a champion, couldn't stay in the same hotels, had to sleep in my van and stuff like that. But I was never bitter. I took the Martin Luther King approach. I had a dream, and I did. And I knew someday I'd be a world champion. It took me years, but I ended up being a world champion. So I wrote the book to leave something here to let people realize when they see him on TV today and making all that big money, it wasn't all that easy when I started.
It's definitely not as easy as it is today. I mean,
right.
My God, it's night and day compared to what you went through and what they kind of went through today. What was some of the struggles as you're kind of making your way through, especially at a young age?
Struggles were, well, I don't want to say they didn't want Afro-Americans or blacks in the business. The struggle was you're wrestling with guys that you were going over, you were going to win. They didn't want to make you look good. They tried to make you look bad, so you had to make yourself look bad. Make yourself look good, and that's what I did. I fought back and I fought hard, and it was either do or die. There was no in between. I wasn't going to be a mid-carder. I wasn't going to be on the opening match. I worked my way up, and I knew that someday I had that drive. But then it's hard to explain. But I would go back to my hotels or in my van driving, thinking what I could do to make myself better, what I could do. A lot of guys, you go to throw drop kicks, they wouldn't be there for you, and you can't get mad and start fights and all that. You just had to suck it up and keep on going. So did they make me look good? No, I made myself look good.
And the wrestling business
They say the philosophy, you're as only good as the guy you work with. And
yeah, exactly.
That case, it wasn't true in my case. I had to, so I learned how to shuffle, and I learned how to drop kick. I would throw a drop kick, and the guy, you could count to 15 before you get up to take another one. So instead of standing there looking like a dummy, I started shuffling and jabbing and it caught on with the people. So I like to say that I probably did the crossover. Not only did the blacks like me, the whites did too.
So charismatic, and you're right. That is something that you don't even pick up on. It's like, man, you got almost like this boxer kind of shuffling, and then a little bit of jabbing going on and doing that stuff. And I was going to say, in wrestling, the opponent is supposed to make the other guy look good and vice versa, and they're not even working with you. So it's doubly tough to do your job.
Yeah, but, I had some experience. I sparred with Muhammad Ali. I lived next to George Foreman when he won the world title. I sparred a lot with him and stuff, and I had a few fights, and I fought amateur. I was Golden Glove as an amateur, so I knew how to take care of myself. But like you said, you have to learn to make yourself look good, because now, I'm not saying all of them. There's 50% that made me look like a champion, but you always get that 25, 30%, and especially if you're winning and they're a loser, and they're on the losing end. Well, nobody wants to be a loser, so they're on the losing end. They're not going to go out there and try and make me look great. I got to make myself look good.
Now, what was it like sparring with Muhammad Ali? I mean, that's pretty insane, and obviously one of the biggest stars in the history, not of only boxing and sports, but just the biggest star in general in the whole world.
Yeah, that was great. He was a great guy. I known him for a lot of years. Actually, I met him when I was a kid up in Toronto, and he was still Cassius Clay. He was getting ready to fight George Chavella for the championship. No, I'm sorry, he was fighting for George Chavella, but it wasn't for the championship. And I met him up in Toronto at Silly Sullivan's gym, and we started got along good. We started to box and shadow box and count around, and we put a piece of plywood down, and we put on James Brown, Night Train, and we started tap dancing and shuffling and that. So he went ahead and called his the Ollie Shuffle. So I said, okay, I'll call mine the Rocky Shuffle.
It's got to be just unbelievable if you think about where he ended up. Like, man, wow, sparring with this guy, we're kind of shooting the shit with each other. We're kind of riffing, and he's getting stuff from me. I'm getting stuff from him. It's pretty cool. I mean, to look back in retrospect and think, he played a role in your career. You kind of played a role in his as well.
Right. I think we fed off each other. He talked the talk and walked the walk, and I did the same thing, but probably not as great as him. But we fed off each other. We were good friends. I really respected him. And, when he left, he took his road and I took mine. And I really think that's what helped me in the wrestling business, because I culminated in the boxing and the wrestling together, where I could show them that I could box, I could shuffle, I could do backdrops and land on my feet, I could do flips and that. Nobody gave it to me. I had to go work at it and practice and practice and practice, and that's what it was all about,
And as far as the book, is there a lot of not only wrestling talk, but is there the boxing talk and the growing up? Do you go through the whole lifespan there?
It's my whole life story, yeah. From leaving Nova Scotia at 14 years old, going up to Toronto, Canada, and getting a job in the car wash for 90 cents an hour to survive, and going to Trinity Recreation Center, training at night, because I went to the Recreation Center because the city paid for it. And then when I started making a couple of dollars an hour, I joined the YMCA for $7 a month. And, and they had wrestling mats, and they had a boxing ring, and I just tried everything. I knew there was something out there, and I just had to find, what it was.
Now, being a black man and basically starting out in the wrestling business in the 1960s, 1964-ish, around that time, and was it hard to find a trainer and hard to find somebody that would want to train you at this point?
Well, that's funny, because the story was we were in Trinity Recreation Center, and it was a big snowstorm, and it was closed, so we went in through the window. And what had happened, the boxers had it from 7 to 8:30, and the wrestlers had it from 8:30 until 10, the ring. And so I was down there working out. One of these wrestlers, just a job guy, came in, and he was in the ring, doing flips and stuff on his own. And I was in there skipping and hitting the punching bag, and he says, "Hey, come on in. I'll show you a couple of holes." I said, "Okay," not knowing that he was just going to use me like as a punching bag, or, just as somebody to spar with and practice these holes on, which I'll say one thing, he was a great guy. He never hurt me, never tried to. So I'd get there after the boxing, I'd wait around, and after they got done, I'd go in with them. So then I asked him, I said, "Well, how do you get to be a wrestler?" And he told me, "Well, this school in Hamilton." It was 40 miles from Toronto where I lived. Jack Wentworth's wrestling school. So I went there. I signed up. I think it was like $50 a month or $40 a month. But they trained twice a week, so I had to take a bus. I didn't have an automobile. So I had to take a bus twice a week. It was $2.40 on the bus each way. So I trained from there. And then from there, Whipper Watson was running for Congress and running for something. And he called over to Jack and he goes, do you have any black kids over there? And Jack said, well, I got one guy here. He's young. He's cocky, you know, and the whole bit. But so Watson said, well, let me take bring him down. I'll take a look at him. So I went down and worked on the mat with Fred Atkins when I was 6 foot, and he made me 6'2". But Watson liked what he saw, and the next week he put me on TV. I stayed there for like 3 or 4 months, and then he lost election, so he sent me to Calgary to Stu Hart. And I got a lot of my experience, and I owe all that probably to Stu Hart and the dungeon in Calgary, Canada.
Say Stu Hart's dungeon, the infamous dungeon. So many excellent wrestlers have come out of there.
Right, but he made you respect the business, and that was the thing. And I had to work with him every night at all these little small towns, 15-minute Broadway, which is 15-minute draw. And before I left, he told me, he sent me to Detroit for the Sheik. And he said, kid, with your attitude and the way you work, he said, someday you'll be a world champion. And I think that's what gave me the drive and everything.
That is awesome. He's saying so many famous guys have been trained under him, and the lineage obviously not his sons withstanding, so many other guys as well. Brett Owen, but so many other guys as well.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of them. The Tollers brothers, the Sharp brothers, Dewey Roberts, and I can go on and on and on. But when you left there, you could probably say you were a wrestler because you knew how to wrestle. And the main thing, Stu taught you a few things, how to take care of yourself. You know, because you did get that guy that would try to hurt you. I worked with Fred Atkins, which was a pretty good guy, but by then he was in the late 50s, and I worked with him every night, and he had to do a job like he had to put me over every night. And so he was always trying to tie me up or hook me or go behind, really not to hurt me, but just to let me know who the boss was.
That's the way it was back then. They were very tough, very real. They were respecting the business, but also protecting the business.
A lot of guys didn't make it in them days. You had probably 10% out of all the schools that made it. You know, if you weren't like 200, 225 pounds and 6 foot, they didn't want you. Now they'll take you at 130 pounds and 5'8", you know. So that just shows you how the business changed. But I think it changed for the best. I don't know. I still watch it and stuff like that. But I know my days that a lot of those guys that I see today wouldn't make it.
Oh, no. Today is a completely different ball game. Like you said, a lot of smaller guys.
It's the showmanship, and it's all showmanship, and it's who can take the biggest thing. The problem with it today, and I'm not knocking it because the guys are making money, and God bless them, but I watch it, and 90% of them have no psychology. They're just doing the move because they know how to do it.
Totally agree. So, they're just doing moves. They're not paying attention to the crowd. They're not paying attention to it making sense.
Yeah, right. They're not telling the story. In our day, we told a story. You know, like you pounded on me for 5 minutes, and when the crowd was ready and I thought it was ready, I'd get up and make the big comeback and pound on you. Then we do that for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we would go home. You know, and that would be it.
It's a whole different ballgame today. They're almost just doing acrobatics, trying to hurt themselves for real, and not really protect each other. It's just move after move after move.
And they're lucky they get 3 or 4 years, which I got over 30 years in this business. And now they're lucky if they can get 3 or 4 years of it because all the goofy bumps they take, which means nothing when the first match is going over the top ropes into the crowd off a ladder. What's left for the main event to do? You know, it's just
so true.
It doesn't make any, yeah. And I'm not knocking them. God bless them. I hope they all make money, and I hope they're all happy. I had a good career. I enjoyed it. If I had to do it over again, I would. Probably a little bit different, but I don't think I would have to go through today what I went through 35 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, what you went through is crazy. And as far as writing the book and reliving some of these memories, was it kind of easy to remember the stuff, or was it a little painful? Was it hard to remember some of the stuff because you're experiencing it all over again?
Yeah, I went through a lot, and I had to think about a lot. And a lot of times when I was writing it, and then I realized, hey, what this guy done and that guy done, you kind of get a little bitter, but then I had to let it go because I wanted the truth. I told the good, the bad. When you buy the book or get the book, you'll see that I told the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, that's what my book was all about.
What are your expectations?
I'm sorry?
What are your expectations for the book?
What do you mean? What are my expectations?
Like, are you you think it's basically big seller? Like, how do you kind of foresee it, or do you have low expectations? It is what it is.
I push. I think the book's going to go. It's going to be fantastic. All the feedbacks I'm getting and all the interviews and everything I'm doing. I think the book's going to be fantastic. What I'm doing next, I would like to. With my boy in that, I would like to put it into a movie and let the people really see it.
I think I know the perfect guy to help you with that and play with that. I know you said your boy. I know you.
Yeah, I think I know him too.
He may be the biggest movie star of all time. I think we're on the same page.
Well, yeah, because he is. He's the highest paid wrestler, actor in the world right now. So I think he would help me a little bit. But he's always helped me. He's always been behind me. Like now, I like to say he put me out to pasture. I'm just down here working out, doing this, doing that, working with the Jody Maggio Cancer Center for children. When you got a boy that's successful as mine, and then you look at some of these kids 5 and 6 years old that have cancer, and that it really makes you thankful.
Absolutely. And he writes the foreword to the book, obviously. And then as far as him, and you're saying maybe movie, this and that, but when he was starting out in the wrestling business, did you want him to get in the wrestling business, or did you want him not to be in the wrestling business?
I tried to discourage him every way I could because I didn't want him to go through what I went through with all the prejudice, all this, all the other. And I said no. And he went to college. He graduated. He took criminal justice. He went to academy in Carolina. He was going to be an FBI agent, but he came back. It was in his blood because, his grandfather wrestled. I wrestled. And, right now we're 4 generations because his daughter's getting ready to wrestle. So I tried to discourage him. So he came back, and I had a good talk with him. I said, okay, I'll train you. But I'm going to train you 150%. When I think you're ready, I'll let you know. But naturally, after a month, he thought he was ready. And I held him back. And he went to New York, and the rest is history.
And you always hear the story that you weren't easy on him. You treated him like he wasn't.
I probably trained him harder than I trained any other guy. And one day he was clowning around, so I got mad, and I said, if you want sympathy, go home to your mother and get it. And he said, that's exactly where I'm going. So he walked a mile and a half home in the rain. Then when I got home, his mother was mad at me. He said I was trying to kill him and all that. And then he wouldn't talk to me for a couple of days. Then a couple of days he'd come and talk. We sat and talk. And I explained to him, this is not a game. This is not a joke. You're going to go out. You got championship material in it, and you're going to go out and prove it. And when I think you're ready, I'll let you know. And then we had Pat Patterson at that time was the president for WWE come down, take a look at him, and they couldn't believe it. They said, "Were you wrestled before?" He said, "I had. Just my dad trained me," and they brought him up, and I don't have to tell you about the rest.
One of the greatest, not only wrestling careers, but he turns it into one of the biggest and greatest movie careers, and becomes basically the king of Hollywood, one of the biggest stars of all time anywhere. Pretty remarkable. Did you ever foresee that from him? I know a lot of fathers think like, "Oh, my son's great," but can you ever even think in your wildest imagination like he's going to be not only a star, he's going to be the biggest star?
I knew he was going to be a star. I didn't really think he was going to be the biggest star there ever was, or is. But he was like me. I seen it in him. He had that drive, and he knew, what do I do when I get done wrestling, or what am I going to do in that? So, you know, they asked him to go on Saturday Night Live for like 3 times, and he wouldn't go. And then Vince McMahon said, well, what will you do for me? So he says, okay. And he done it, and they seen how versatile he was with all the different skits he did. They took him right to Hollywood, and his first movie, The Scorpion King, he was the highest paid first-time actor ever for a first-time acting role. He just caught on, you know.
So good. And I think that especially Vince and obviously Pat Patterson, they probably saw a lot of you in him, that charisma, the way he moved, the body type. Did they mention it to you? Like, you know, they see a great future because of how athletic you were?
Yeah. Yes, they did. Vince come up and told me after about 2 months, he says, the kid, he's a natural. He's like you. And he said, we'll have him make him a millionaire in a year. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. They told me the same thing. But they did. And what it was, his match, he went out and done his thing, and Pat Patterson came back hollering at him, you're not jabbing, you're not shuffling, you're not throwing drop kicks like your dad. And he looked at Pat and said, Pat, his name is Rocky Johnson. My name's Dwayne Johnson. So I wanted him to do his own thing. I didn't want him to, you know, I told him to do whatever you felt comfortable with. Drop kicks, he just couldn't catch on. He could kick you in the knees, and that's about as high as he could get. But anything else he could do. He could fly out the top ropes. He could backdrop, land his feet. He could do kip-ups, everything. So I said, you know, you take what you got, and what's not working, just let it go. Don't even worry about it.
Now, we know how he got basically recruited there from you, but when you were, running the territories, obviously going, the Ohio territory, Memphis, you said Georgia, obviously Florida, you were in the Pacific Northwest, you were in Jim Crockett, you worked for New Japan, but at one point in the late 60s, early 70s, you were in the WWF with Vince McMahon Sr., but how did you get back into the WWF with Vince?
Well,
was that something that Pat Patterson recruited you in?
No, what it was, when I was with Vince Sr., I was working for the Sheik in Detroit, and I was only going in and out on the bases. I wasn't in there steady. You know, I was wrestling Detroit territory, and Vince McMahon Sr. would bring me in, Thunderbolt Patterson, and, because they needed blacks up there, so they'd bring us in when the Sheik would let us go. And he'd go, well, you're going to New York for a week. You're going up there for 3 days. In them days, you said, okay. You had to go where the dollar was. And then when I was in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, I got a call from Vince Sr., which wanted me to come in. And he said, we're going to do something with you. And that's how I went in. And I was there when they made the crossover, I was there when Vince Sr. passed away. But that's how I got into it. When I got into it, was the WWF, and then they switched it to the WWE.
When you're there and you're working for Vince Jr., is there a big difference between Junior and Senior?
In retrospect, I would say yes. And, Vince Sr., I guess you'd say like me, only on a bigger basis. He had a dream. He was going to take the world over, and that's exactly what he did. And when my day, it was territories. It was, Texas, Georgia, Florida, places like that. He just went in and he knew he was going to take it all. We worked for him, so we had no choice. We had to go, and we were going against Florida. We were going against Texas. We were going against Calgary. But eventually, he took it all over, and he took it from the small arenas, and the armories and that, and he took it big time. Look how big it is today.
Huge global business, global empire he built.
Just WrestleMania alone does probably over $1 billion because it goes all over the world.
Yes, absolutely.
So he's a businessman. He's a very smart and talented man, and I'll leave it like that.
And when you come in, it's basically when he was kind of raiding the territories and getting all this awesome talent, like a Hogan, like a Snuka, like an Andre the Giant. He was basically, I mean, these are guys that were in and out of WWF with his father and even him a little bit, but he was taking them and signing them to contracts and then creating TV deals. I mean, you were part of this big thing where he's stealing talent.
Well, that's what he was doing, but he was paying more money too.
Yes, exactly.
So that's fine. That's one of the reasons I went, you know. So, you know, you're in a territory around figures. In those days, if you're making $100,000, $150,000 a year, and he's going to say, look, I'm going to give you a contract and I'm going to give you $250 a year at a minimum, and it's on paper, what are you going to say? You'd be stupid to say no. You know, when I left and went from Oregon into New York, they got mad at me. But I knew I was going to make nearly the money, and which I made a great living in Portland, that I was going to make in New York.
We use the word revolution because this is a revolution! All Elite Wrestling premieres on Wednesday, October 2nd at 8 o'clock on TNT.
We want to set a new standard for all of pro wrestling and for all pro wrestling fans.
Made by wrestlers for wrestling fans. Get ready for the revolution with All Elite Wrestling. It's the most exciting professional wrestling in the last decade. AEW flies higher, hits harder, and with their all-inclusive roster of superstars, they are breaking all boundaries. Chris Jericho, Cody and Brandy Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Nyla Rose, and more. All Elite Wrestling. A new league rises Wednesday, October 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on TNT. All Elite Wrestling. A new league rises Wednesday, October 2nd at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on TNT.
Got to do it. I mean, it's just a smart business move. And he was
like now with this new league they got coming up at IWA, which is, I think, is starting tomorrow night on TV. It's the same thing there.
AEW next week. Yep, next Wednesday. AEW. Yep, starting up.
It's starting tomorrow. It's on TV here tomorrow. And
it'll be October 2nd. So it'll be next Wednesday.
Okay, next Wednesday. You're right. Okay, but I mean, that's what they're doing. They're snatching up trying to get all of their talent they can. You know, they want older guys like myself to teach these young kids like psychology. They're going to start training these indie guys. And I don't think it's competition. I think it's opposition against Vince, because now he didn't have to worry, but now he's got to worry because they got the money behind him. They got TV behind them. And I'm not knocking New York. I mean, New York's doing billions of dollars. But when you got guys who've been there 15, 20 years, come on, you know. It's time for a change.
Yeah, and look, this is your old nemesis, Dusty Rhodes. His son, Cody, is one of the bosses there running things.
Yeah, he's one of the big bosses. They give him a couple $100 million up front just to find for the talent. So, you know, I think they do. I don't know. I watch it. I keep my mouth shut, and I wish both sides nothing but the best. Because I always say a guy that's making money, he's happy. When he's not making money, he can't pay his bills, then he's not happy. So, but, you know, I was there when they came up with the contracts, and that was the best thing that ever happened. Because guys know, and now if they get hurt, they got insurance. They get paid while they're injured. We never had that in my day.
It's definitely a different ballgame, and it's so much different.
Oh, yeah, because what I had to do is I made decent money, and I made good money, so I always made sure my car payment was 2 or 3 payments ahead in case I got hurt and had to be off for a month or 3 or 4 weeks. I didn't want to refund my automobile, which I've seen that happen to a lot of guys. But now, you know, they got insurance, they got everything, which I'm glad for them. So I did see a big change that way. But the thing is, how much time are they getting? They're getting 2 or 3 years. They're all banged up. You know, knees done, hips done, shoulders done. Are they looking to think, what am I going to do after wrestling? Because I'm still young. I'm only 30, 35 years old. What am I going to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah, completely different ballgame now. You got to be prepared, and obviously more prepared now than you were in your day, for sure.
Oh, yeah, you most definitely have to be, because they're not getting all the the years and time. I mean, look at Rey Mysterio, greatest guy in the world, nicest guy you ever meet. But look at all the injuries he's had. And he's only, 33, 34 years old. And you couldn't find a nicer guy. But he was smart. He saved his money, invested it. But how many guys are not, probably 80%.
Very, very true. Now, going back to you for a second in WWF, you had a singles run there. You're going along, but then they put you in a tag team with Tony Atlas, the Soul Patrol, if you will. The chemistry with you guys, was it the same on screen? It was off screen. Did you guys get along? So I always heard that you guys didn't really get along off camera, but on camera, obviously, the chemistry is a lot different.
Right. The tag team was only we didn't get along. We had two different personalities, and he was the kind of the jealous type. That everything had to be his way, or he couldn't drop kick, he couldn't shuffle. And I think the thing was too, and I'm not knocking him or anything, but he's in the ring and they're hollering Rocky, and I think that would bother me too if it had been reversed. But he never got along with anybody, not only with me. He never got along with Pusky, Hogan, nobody. That was his personality, So, I just let it go. I mean, after the matches, he went his way and I went mine,
The first ever black tag team champions, you're the WWF tag team champions to beat the Wild Samoans. Such an historic match and such an historic championship. What are your thoughts looking back on that?
I thought that was the greatest thing that happened. I think Vince knew it was time for the crossover. He knew it was time to make a black champion. He didn't want to take a chance on just an individual, so he went with the tag team to see. And it got over very well. People really went nuts, and But then at the end, he got fired because he would make all the big towns and he wouldn't make the small towns. And then I went to Washington, D.C., and I walked in the dressing room, and I seen Bobo Brazil sitting there. Then I knew right there that they were going to fire him. So they did. They naturally took the belts from us, and then they fired him, and they let him go, and then they brought him back to Zamba Zuba or something, and they kept him for a little bit, and then they let him go again. So I don't know what he's doing now, and, whatever he's doing, I wish him the best, and that's about all I can say. Pretty
crazy if you think about it, that you look so chemistry-wise, you look like you were so got along so well on screen, but off screen, that's a completely different ball game.
Oh yeah, we didn't hardly speak to each other, talk to each other. Well, he did that with everybody. He just had a real bad, and I hear he still got it today. I don't know, but I heard he's got them days. He just had that bad. He was jealous of everybody, and Hogan was bigger and stronger, and he's telling me I should be world champion, and I'm saying, okay, I should be world champion too, but they made Hogan out world champion, so what are you going to do, fight City Hall? So, and that was his downfall.
And you mentioned you guys probably could have been champions longer. I mean, it's a 154-day reign, but like you said, he kind of screwed that up, and it could have and should have been a longer title run.
Vince had it for a long time, but it was in those days. We won the big shows, Baltimore, New York, Boston, but then we also did the high schools and the armories, spot shows we called them. And he'd never show up for them. He'd just show up for the big shows, and half the time you didn't know when he was going to show up. And if somebody made a mistake, one of the guys who were wrestling, usually them were just job men on TV, and most of them had daytime jobs. And if they made a mistake, he would curse and swear and call them all kinds of names and stuff like that. His attitude was real bad. And well, look what he's doing now. I mean, he's doing all those shoot interviews, knocking Snooker, knocking Roddy Piper, knocking Bruiser Brody, everybody, That, to me, I think that's sad and sickening, but I stay out of it.
Yeah, you guys should have definitely 100% been champions longer. You lose the tag titles, North-South Connection, Dick Murdoch, Adrian Adonis. Then you kind of go into singles run for a bit. Why did you end up leaving the WWF?
I left up leaving because my back started hurting, my knee was hurting. Then my father-in-law, High Chief Peter Maivia, was opening the territory in Hawaii, and he had just bought it from Ed Francis, and he wanted me to come down there because, you know, I was his son-in-law, and he wanted me to help him book and stuff like that. So I left and went to Hawaii.
And it's funny, the way you leave, it's not like one of those things where you're like kind of losing on the way out either. They kind of, you know, they let you get some wins. Was that kind of uncommon back then?
Well, they knew that in case they ever wanted to bring me back, and they knew I drew money for them, and they knew, and I'm not bragging, that I was a decent worker. So even my last match in the Garden, I figured, well, this is it. I'm going to put somebody over, and they put me over, you know, in like 6 minutes. They said, go out and do your stuff, do your backdrop, land your feet, do your drop kicks, your shuffle, and sunset flip, 1, 2, 3. I couldn't believe it. I said, okay, fine. Yeah, they kept me strong when I left.
They really did. And kind of like research and looking up, I was like, wow, I'm surprised. I knew you had a singles run, but I surprised all the wins on the way out. I was just like, wow, that is definitely different, especially from Vince.
Yeah, I know. It was, and it surprised me too. But he never beat me. He never used me as a job man or nothing. He just kept me strong. Well, as long as I was getting over with the fans, you know.
Absolutely. And as we start to wind it down here, we head towards the finish line. Just got to ask about some of your favorite matches, because you were always kind of the main event of the territory. Like you said, champion in Florida, champion pretty much everywhere you went. Obviously, NWA Mid-America down there, Memphis, Tennessee, CWA.
I was even champion in Arabia. I was champion in Africa. I still have the belt here from Africa. I never went back to defend it.
Wow.
Yeah, so
and
they didn't really like me over there, because I wrestled a black guy over there, Power Rudy, and they don't really care for American blacks or Canadian blacks and everything. So I won the belt, and the BBC from London, England came in and taped it, and they wanted me to come back in 30 days. So I said, okay. And I knew I wasn't coming back. So I got the belt, and that was it. Because, you know, I couldn't go any place, had to stay in a hotel. They hated me.
So crazy back then. You just think of the different things and you know what takes place, and the kind of the hatred and the vitriol for kind of no reason. But on more of a high note, of a good note, is that you had so many NWA World Title matches, whether it was against Harley Race or Terry Funk or Jack Briscoe. I mean, just looking at that, it's just like, wow. You know, what a career. And anybody that's facing the NWA champion, especially those three, that is some pretty high praise. And that's some pretty, you know, as far as what they think of you, if you're on the top of the card against those guys in an NWA title match, that's pretty important.
Oh, yeah. I was making $4,000 or $5,000 a match. I wrestled Harley Race 3 times for the world's title in St. Louis. I wrestled him here in Florida. I wrestled Jack Briscoe 3 or 4 times. I had great matches with Terry Funk when he was world champion. I had a lot of main events. So any territory I went in, and again, I'm not bragging or saying it was me, or I guess my style was a little different, but any place I went in, they would tell me they had plans for me, you know. If they didn't have plans, I wasn't going to go. I never had one I had never had one territory tell me that, you know. But I've seen guys
always main event.
Yeah, but I've seen guys where they tell them, we can bring you in, use you up and down, which means we'll beat you one night and let you win the next night, or we'll keep you in the middle, but you're not a main eventer, or stuff like that, you know. And I guess I was fortunate enough, for probably the only Afro-American or Canadian-American, whatever you want to call me, because I have dual citizenship, that they looked up to, you know, respected. I got a lot of respect of this business because I gave a lot of respect. And I had a good career. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I look back at it, how hard it was, but I didn't know any better. So I went out and did what I had to do.
Big feud with Jerry Lawler down there. You're fighting Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA World Title. I mean, a lot of big-time matches that you had throughout your career. Any of them stick out more than others? Yeah,
Harley Race. Harley Race and Jack Briscoe, I would say they stick out because, and, you know, they wouldn't beat him, they wouldn't beat me. And I went an hour with Harley Race, then I come back and went 90 minutes with him, and I go an hour Broadway, an hour with Jack Briscoe. Anytime I worked with a world champion, it was always an hour or a disqualification. They didn't want to beat me. Because, again, you got to remember, they didn't have a lot of blacks in them days.
Yeah, that's true, and especially not with your charisma, your skill, your athleticism either. So you throw that in there too. It's like hard combination to beat.
Yeah, that's what they looked at. When I went in Tennessee, they had 3 or 4 black guys in there. And again, I don't knock anybody. But they were satisfied. They were decent, and they had them eating chicken, fried chicken on TV, and they wanted to tar and feather them and all that garbage. I didn't play that road. I went in as an athlete wherever I went, and I was going to leave as an athlete.
Now, as far as the book, I just want to make one last final pitch for the book. Soul Man, the Rocky Johnson story, coming out very, very soon. Scott Keel, a great author, helped you out there. What's kind of like the final push for the book? If somebody's kind of on the fence or maybe thinking about, give us a real reason why they should buy Soul Man.
Why I think they should, I think it's an interesting book. It shows my life story. It shows you the struggle. When they looked at me and seen I was a world champion or seen I was this champion, they didn't know what I went through and what it took to get there. And I think when I read other books, I read them on Muhammad Ali, I read on Jackie Robinson in baseball. I based mine around Jackie Robinson, where he had to break down all the racial barriers. And that's what I think I done. And I kind of paved the road, I hope I did anyway, for other wrestlers. And it also talks about me growing up, where I had to work for 90 cents an hour and then get $1.25 an hour, but I still trained, and I never gave up hope. And that's what I want to get to these people today. No matter what you're doing, whether it's in wrestling or whether it's in anything, always say I can, and you will accomplish. But if you give up, you're only defeating yourself.
Now, where can people get the book and maybe do a little
They can get it up on most of the stores. They can get it on Amazon, and they can go on Facebook and just punch in Rocky Johnson, and then they'll see where to get the book. The book comes out the 15th of next month, and I'll be doing signings all over, like Barnes and Nobles and places like that. They'll be carrying the book.
One last time, of course, it is Soul Man, the Rocky Johnson story. Like you said, check it on Facebook, Soul Man Rocky Johnson. I'll have all the info on there. Check it out on Amazon if you want to purchase it that way. Barnes & Noble, wherever your books are sold, that's where Soul Man, the Rocky Johnson story will be available. And, Rocky, is there anywhere where the fans can kind of reach out and reach out to you? Would you suggest Facebook or anything if anybody kind of, wanted to just say hi or,
Yeah, you can. You can Facebook me, just Rocky Johnson at bellsouth.net. And anybody that Facebooks me, I'll be more than happy to get back with them.
All right. Well, Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for all the time you gave today. And it's been a real honor to talk to a real trailblazer and one of the most charismatic men ever in the history of the business, the Soul Man himself.
Well, I appreciate all the compliments, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.